Hello fellow gaijins, welcome back to the Basics for Beginners series. Before we start the lesson though, I want to thank you guys for your feedback and your constructive criticism. Feedback like this really helps me to understand you guys better and to also tone down on the speed or maybe make things a little easier to understand when I explain them, or faster or harder depending on what you guys need. So again, thank you so much for the feedback. Let's get into the lesson. Here we go again. The sentence from the last episode. Let's get right into it. 明日から20歳ですから新しいペットを飼います。どこで飼いますか？東京で飼いますよ。Let's start at the beginning and break this thing down. It's a conversation between two people, as you can see, and they are talking about a pet. Petto means pet. Let's first identify the main part of the first sentence. In my opinion, the main part is petto o kaimasu. Kau means to buy. Petto means pet. The little two makes the T double. Atarashii petto. Atarashi is just the adjective new. Atarashii petto o kaimasu. Now we see the kara, which means because, or that's why. So there is a reason for that person to buy a new pet. So the reason, as stated here, is 明日から20歳です。What does that mean? 明日から means from tomorrow onwards. The kara doesn't mean that's why or because, but it's the kara that we learned in episode 4, which means from. So starting from tomorrow, I am 20 years old. That's why I will buy a new pet. Remember that it's not 20歳 but 20歳. Person B answers with どこで買いますか? Doko means where. De is the particle that marks places where actions take place. The action in this case is kaimasu. Doko de kaimasu ka? And the ka makes the whole thing into a question. Where will you buy it? Just to say this again, Japanese is very contextual, and often Japanese people just don't say the it or the I or the you or the he. All those pronouns are just not said. In English, this sentence would be a little bit strange to just say, where will you buy? Grammatically, it doesn't really make sense. You need an it. But in Japanese, you can totally just use it like this. You don't need any pronoun for this. You will see this a lot also in future sentences. Person A then just follows up with 東京で買いますよ. Tokyo de kaimasu is self-explanatory, I think, but the yo at the end is not. The yo at the end is like the ne at the end of the sentence that we had a few episodes ago. It's also like a nuance kind of thing. The feeling of the sentence changes a little bit, like with the ne. The yo has a specific function. When you put a yo at the end of a sentence, most of the time it means that I want to tell you something new that you don't know, or that I want to teach you something. So to make an example in our own language, it would be, it's like this, you know? The you know at the end of the sentence kind of gives you a feeling of I want to teach you something. The yo in this case is the same. So let's translate this conversation from beginning to end. From tomorrow onwards, I will be 20 years old. That's why I will buy a new pet. Where will you buy it? Says person B. I will buy it at Tokyo. I hope this explanation was enlightening for you and that you learned something out of it. Let's look at the new katakana for the day. Today I want to look at the katakana that start with M and the ones that start with age. So after learning these kana, there will be only like 6 katakana left, which we will learn in the next episode. And then we will be finished with katakana and we can start really focusing on hiragana. I decided that I want to focus a lot on hiragana and vocabulary after we are finished with katakana, just so that we can really make better example sentences and also look at a lot of other examples like out of mangas or books, and we can read through them together, and we can also look at anime together, like a short clip I show you, and we can look at what every person is saying and translate the whole thing. So that will be a lot of fun, I think. But for that you need a lot more vocabulary, so I think I will take 3 or maybe 4 episodes to really go through all the hiragana and through some vocabulary that I think is super important and that is in the most common 1000 Japanese words list. And then starting like from episode 11 or 12 onwards, we will have a lot more episodes where I focus on showing you examples, as I said, like anime, books, and so on. I have a shelf over there where I have a lot of children's books and children's manga that will help us with this cause. Here are the katakana to start with M. Ma. Ma. Me. me, mi, mi, mo, mu, mu, h, ha, he, hi, ho, hu. Usually when you write hu with romaji, it's written as an fu. It really sounds a lot like an F if you say it like hu, but it's not really an F. It's more like a mixture between an F and an H. So listen to it carefully again. I will show you the pronunciation of a native speaker. In the last episode, I forgot to mention that S actually has a Dakuten version, which is the katakana with Z. So if you, for example, take sa and then you put Dakuten on it, it is za. She doesn't become Z, but Ji, which is the J version. Here are the pronunciations real quick. Za, ze, ji, zo, zu. The H katakana also have a Dakuten version, which is ba, be, bi, bo, bu. So the H just becomes a B. In the lesson we talked about Dakuten versions. I mentioned a thing that is called handakuten. Handakuten are basically the same thing, but it's like a third version of the same katakana or hiragana. Handakuten only exists for the H katakana or hiragana. The H just becomes a P, pa, pe, pi, po, pu. I know this was a lot of katakana at once, but most of them have the same sign anyway, and you only have to remember the sounds that they become when there is a dakuten or a handakuten. Just focus on the main versions of the katakana, and the handakuten and dakuten versions will come by itself because they're so similar you won't really have to think about it too much once they really appear in the vocabulary. Speaking of vocabulary, let's get into the new vocabulary for today. Hi. いいえ、いいえ、ほん、日、読む、話す、言う、いる、ある、買う、一つ、二つ、三つ、いい、今。Aru and iru both basically mean to exist. Iru is used for people, animals, and other living things, and aru is always used for things like objects and other inanimate things. Iru and aru also mean to have something, but there is a separate word for having in Japanese. But aru can be used too, like I have a pen. Pen ga aru. Asoko inu ga iru. As you noticed, I just used the particle ga. Iru and aru are used all the time. They're probably some of the most important verbs in Japanese. Hitotsu, futatsu, and mitsu. They mean one thing, two things, and three things. These are actually the original Japanese numbers. Not the Sino-Japanese numbers that we learned before that came from China, but the actual original Japanese numbers. They're usually used for counting things. For example, if you want to order soba in a restaurant, you can just say soba o hitotsu. If you use it like this, they use the o particle in front. Hitotsu, futatsu, and mitsu are always used only for inanimate things. We will talk about how to count animate things in the next episode. Because we had so much vocabulary today, I have only two kanji for you today, which are fairly easy. Ima and nichi. In the next episode, or maybe two from now, we will talk about the present continuous form, so what we are doing at this moment. So ima is a very useful word for that. Grammar! Today's grammar will be quicker and easier than the last episode's grammar. First, let's talk about some particles. No is a particle that we already know. Up to now, we only talked about the function that no puts two nouns together and makes a correlation between them. But there is another function of no that we haven't talked about yet. The new functionality that no can provide that we will talk about now is that it can turn verbs into nouns. Reading a book is interesting. This example sentence has a verb that functions like a noun, right? To do the same in Japanese, we use the particle no. So you take the normal dictionary form, yomu, and then you just add the no at the end of the verb. And then it just becomes a noun. If you would translate this sentence into Japanese, it's just yomu no ga omoshiroi desu. Yomu no just works like any other noun would. You can do this with any verb. Let's look at the next particle. It's to. To is a really practical particle that is also really easy to understand because it's basically the and in the language. But it can only be used between nouns. This and this and this and this. To say bottle in Japanese, you say botoru. Pen in Japanese is pen. If I want to say a bottle and a pen, I can just say botoru to pen. Pen to socks. So it's not like our and that can be used with adjectives and other stuff. It can only be used with nouns. The next grammar I want to talk about are adjectives. In Japanese, there are two different types of adjectives. They're called the na adjectives and the I adjectives. Let's first talk about the I adjectives real quick. Some adjectives that you know already that are I adjectives are atarashii and omoshiroi, for example. They always end on an I. So it's pretty easy to recognize them, but there are a few na adjectives that also end on an I that are not I adjectives. I adjectives are actually the more complicated type because they are kind of hard to conjugate. We will not go into the conjugations now because those are kind of complicated and I want to make a separate video only for that. The na adjectives are a lot like nouns basically. They are the easier type to use in conjugations and stuff like that, but you always have to put a na in between them and a noun that you want to put after it. The na adjective that you know already is suki. Let's make two examples with suki. If you want to say I like dogs, you can say watashi wa inu ga suki. Remember, suki always uses ga. But if you want to say this is the dog I like, it would just be kore wa watashi no suki na inu. So as you can see, it's suki na inu. Usually this is very specific, and if you put it the other way around, it's more general. So you like dogs is like inu ga suki. That is just, it just means you like dogs. But if you want to say I like this dog, then it's suki na inu, because it's the dog I like, not just I like dogs. As I said, I will make an episode just concerning the adjectives, so we will talk about this a lot more in depth later. Just keep in mind that there are two different adjective types, and when you see them in sentences, think about if they are an I adjective or a na adjective. The last grammar part I want to talk about is nani. In an example sentence, there was nansai, and the nani became nan. I said I will talk about this in a later episode. Now I want to talk about this and why this happened. There are a few basic rules that turn nani into nan. You will get used to this really quickly, but I want to tell you about some rules anyway. There are two cases I want to talk about when nani becomes nan. The first case is if it is followed by a copula, so des, or if it is followed by a particle that starts with t, d, or n. All the other particles always have nani in front of them. For example, if you want to put no after nani, it's nan no. If you want to put des after the nani, it's nan des. For example, what is this? Nan desu ka? If you take the de particle and put nani in front of it, it becomes nan de. If you take the to particle, it's nan to. All the other particles like mo, ga, and so on are just nani ga, nani mo, and so on. The second case where nani always becomes nan is when it's followed by a counter. As we've seen with sai before, nani became nansai. So if you have a counter after nani, it always becomes nan. And this was already everything I wanted to talk to you about in this episode. Before we finish this episode though, here is the sentence for today. I'm really appreciative for all the support that you guys have given me in the comments. It really keeps me motivated to make this series better and better and to make it as often as I can. And I hope that you have enough material to really learn the basics well. And if you need anything else, or you want me to make a specific follow-up video talking only about one topic, I can do that too. Alrighty, thank you so much for watching. Let's wrap this up. If you've liked this episode, as always, throw your shurikens over that like button. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. またね。